Hi everyone, Lewis here, and I'm back with a brand new interview. Today, I'm interviewing the Mermaid Seamstress. If you like this video, please hit the like button. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for alerts of when I upload new content to the channel, especially those with disabilities similar to mine. In this video, they tell me how they became a mermaid, a scuba diver, YouTuber, and so much more. I am joined here by Justine, also known as the Mermaid Seamstress. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Justine. I'm the Mermaid Seamstress. I am a video content creator on YouTube as well as Instagram, and just an all-around mermaid performer and scuba diver.
And I'm Lewis, also known as Merman Adventure Philly. I'm a YouTuber myself. I'm a scuba diver. I'm working on becoming a merman performer, and I'm also autistic.
As am I.
Really? That's interesting. I didn't know you're autistic too. Wow. Welcome to my channel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, Justine, tell me, how did you get into, being in the water in general?
So I missed the first part of that question, but what I heard was how did I kind of start in the water in general? And basically, I started from a very young age swimming at the beach. I grew up on the Atlantic coast, and so we frequently went to the beach around kind of the Central Atlantic, the Outer Banks, things like that. And I was in swim team from age 5 all the way up through age 18. So I was a competitive swimmer for many years. And then I got into scuba diving and free diving and fin swimming kind of in middle school and into high school as a way of kind of continuing to expand my opportunities to explore the underwater world.
Wow. I happen to be a water bug myself because I'm a March baby. Because my birthday is in a couple of days. I was born March 19th.
Oh, happy birthday.
And I've been in love with scuba diving since I was 2 years old when I first seen it on TV. I also did a bit of competitive swimming myself, but through my local Y. I also used to be a lifeguard. I also used to help teach swim lessons.
Yep. All of
Okay.
those things. Definitely.
Okay, the first question is, how did you become a scuba diver?
I started scuba diving actually in college because I needed to take a PE credit. And that's actually not how I started scuba diving. I grew up going and spending a lot of time in the Bahamas. And it is just such a beautiful ecosystem of reefs, and it's usually pretty shallow. So I started out free diving, but I noticed really quickly that it just became harder and harder to see the things that I really wanted to see deeper down. And so I started scuba diving, taking kind of discover scuba type classes and going down on tank, and really the kind of peace in knowing that like I could take my time, I could be calm, and I could be relaxed, and not have to worry so much about my breath hold, which meant that I could get deeper for longer, was a really great feeling. And eventually, after I think it was like 7 or 8 Discover Scuba sessions, the instructor really encouraged me. You can get certified so that you don't so that you could do this all the time. And I was like, oh yeah, absolutely. So it just so happened that my college offered scuba as a PE credit. So I decided to get scuba certified as a PE credit, which was a huge bonus I got because I had already explored all of their other swim classes. And I had gotten my lifeguard certification. And so I was like, okay, what's another certification under my belt?
Nice. What agency are you certified through as a scuba diver?
I am a PADI open water scuba. I am PADI open water scuba certified, and I was actually my certification day was on October 13th, and it was the first snow of the year in Minnesota. And the water temperature was, I think, 52 degrees, and the air temperature was 30 degrees, and it was quite a contrast where I usually dive in the Bahamas, where the water temperature is close to the 80 degrees and the visibility is extreme, and the air temperature is much warmer than that. So it was quite a difference. But
I'm also a PADI open water scuba diver myself.
Yeah, it's great.
And when I did my open water certification dives, we did them here in Pennsylvania up at a quarry, which of course is called Dutch Springs, but now it's been renamed Lake Hydra because it's now under new ownership.
Right.
Because during my third dive, I accidentally went down to 60 feet because I was struggling with my weight belt. And other places I've been diving at, Justine, include Cozumel with my friends from Dive Heart.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also am a volunteer diver for the Adventure Aquarium across the Delaware River in Camden.
Nice. That's awesome. That's so cool.
And of course, I hope to get my advance one day.
Yep, you need a lot of hours for that.
Yes. So how many dives do you have under your belt?
Oh gosh, I have lost track because I am really bad. Sometimes I go with our typical guide dive who lives locally to us in the Bahamas, and sometimes I go with friends and family, and we do. I am notoriously bad at keeping my logbook with me, so a lot of the dives I have done, I have not recorded. So I'm still working on my hours.
I have like over 140 dives so far myself.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah. Are you free diver certified?
I am actually not free diver certified. So my free diving journey is, but I am a PADI advanced mermaid. So I have my certification through PADI as an advanced mermaid, and I actually started free diving with partners of mine in the Bahamas and family friends who it was more of a recreational thing. And while they weren't competitive freedivers, we do a lot of spearfishing. And so my freediving skills kind of came more acquired over time. And we I have taken a lot of safety courses in freediving, but I've never, unfortunately, have not yet gotten the chance to had the financial opportunity to actually pay and get my open water certification for freediving yet.
I'm currently a NAUI open water. I'm not a NAUI open water freediver yet, but I'm currently a confined water freediver.
Nice.
I'm working on my open water freediver as we speak, Justine. But here's the thing: last year when I was taking my certification class, I unfortunately suffered a sinus squeeze, which ended up with a nosebleed, and my right ear temporarily got messed up. And I'm actually working on getting a scholarship through NAUI to hopefully become a NAUI mermaid instructor. And of course, I plan to do my training in Florida if I get the scholarship. I'm just waiting to hear from them. And
yeah,
of course, we're also still going to get on to the next subject of you being a mermaid. How did you become a mermaid?
Yeah, so I kind of came at mermaiding through competitive swimming. It was 2009 when I started fin swimming as a hobby and to go into competition. And from there, I discovered kind of Mermaid Linden and Hannah Mermaid, both of whom
Hannah Fraser?
Hannah Fraser, who are both incredible inspiration to me. And I decided to look up a tutorial. And so in 2011, 2011, I made my very first mermaid tail and started performing and swimming for fun. And then in a couple of years later in college, I'm really bad at assigning years to pieces of the timeline, but a couple of years later, I met up with Courtney Mermaid, the Shop Vancouver Mermaid, and Nerdmaid Faith, and started my own YouTube channel in, I believe it was 2017. So I've been mermaiding since 2009. I made my first tail in 2011 and have been performing ever since.
Speaking of Mermaid Linden, I actually interviewed her last year on this channel.
I noticed that. She's amazing. She's this really big inspiration for me. I love that she focuses her energy on conservation in my human life. I am a conservation advocate and interpretive naturalist. So it's a really big passion of mine to combine as much as I can mermaiding and conservation.
And speaking of Linden, I have my own Linden monofin, which I got 3 years ago with my Mertailor guppy. I seen your video on your review of that.
Yes, it is one of my favorites. Definitely one of my favorites. It really, not to repeat myself for my reviews, but it really has that combination of power, safety, and propulsion and the aesthetic that I really, really love. And it is one of my favorites. I use it in a lot of my tails.
I totally agree with you with that, because I'm planning to get myself a Finfolk Discovery next year, because I want my first scuba knit tail, and the fact it's also compatible with the Linden.
Yes.
And let me tell you how I became a merman. I was inspired by someone who I used to be friends with for years. She started her own journey 2019, got her Finfolk, which was a Andromeda and a Finis foil monofin. And she too is an advanced Patty mermaid as well. Currently lives in Florida, swims in the springs with the Florida Mermaid Springs mermaids. But she's not, this former friend of mine isn't the only one who inspired me to want to be a merman. I was also influenced by other things. Like, I seen The Little Mermaid when I was 5, and I seen Mermen in the movie, and then Mako Mermaids, which also had a couple of mermen, Zach and Eric. You ever seen that show?
Yes, I have. I was a huge fan. H2O was definitely my generation, and I watched it so many different times.
Yeah, this friend also introduced me to H2O, and I actually like it.
I love H2O.
And of course, I might have started my Mersona and Merman Instagram 4 years ago, but my journey officially didn't begin until 3 years ago when I got my tail. I got it as an early birthday gift, which of course I got my tail the day that COVID-19 was unfortunately declared a global pandemic. So I couldn't swim in it for a year. I had to wait until 2021, where a friend of mine who lives in Philadelphia, she let me use her pool, and that was the first time I got to swim in my tail. And then down the shore in Wildwood, I got to do my first beach stuff. And then last summer in Wildwood, while I was staying there for the week, I got to swim in the motel pool, which was my second swim in my tail. Of course, during neither of those swims I was a free diver. I wasn't a free diver during neither of those times. But of course, by the time I went to Cozumel back in December, I was a combined water free diver. And yes, and during my third swim, Justine, my monofin straps broke, which I had to end up telling Lyndon, and my mother had to patch up my tail skin for me because the seams were coming undone.
Wow. Yeah, that's a tricky thing. So I have a lot of experience with sewing, hence the name the Mermaid Seamstress.
Good.
I started out my tail maker journey, I guess, with my very first tail. So up until the kind of the early days of my channel were a lot about how to repair mermaid tails, how to make your own mermaid tail, how to get started mermaiding. I did a lot of instructional videos on all of that. And that is also a really big passion of mine now, is working with tail making companies on how to make their tails better, how to make their tails plus size inclusive. That's been a huge part of my journey as kind of an influencer, or finfluencer, as they say, is kind of making tails and mermaid tails and mermaiding more inclusive for people of all sizes and for all ability levels, and finding that tail or that monofin that works best for them, because it is really like finding a Cinderella slipper, right? Everybody kind of needs different things from their monofins, whether they're a performer or whether they're a recreational mermaid. They need different levels of comfort and safety and accessibility. And so I think that it's really important to kind of provide that perspective and to show off the different options that work for people of different abilities, and getting that different levels of representation into the mermaid community.
Speaking of being a plus size merfolk, I'm a plus size merman myself, Justine.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, because I have a belly. And of course, this is what I was told by some. Some companies will not hire mermen in general, let alone plus size merfolk, to do gigs.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate, because it's really limiting the amount of representation that kids get to see on an everyday basis. And so one reason why I produce my own content, as well as collaborating with people like the Society of Fat Mermaids and Mermaid Chez Monique, is that I want to be that representation. And I was really lucky a couple years ago to work with Finfolk Productions, not only on kind of helping expand their plus size lines, but also representing their brand as a finfluencer for their pod. And now shifting gears and going back to my roots as a Shop Vancouver Mermaid affiliate, and a good friend of mine, and supporting local artists and artists with disability, and artists who really represent my values, which is that mermaiding is for everybody, and it should be inclusive, no matter who you are or what you look like, or what your abilities are, as long as you can swim safely. Or if you can't swim, then as long as you can be in a tail safely, then mermaiding is for you. And even if you just can't be in a tail but really want that mermaid mentality, then yes, absolutely, you're a mermaid or merman or merfolk, or however that pans out for you.
Yeah, I'm happy to call myself a merman, because a lot of mers out there on Instagram said to me that more mermen are needed in the community. And of course, I also follow Merman Christian, who I also interviewed on this channel. I've also interviewed the mermaid who inspired me to become a merman, as well as I also interviewed Raina. Are you familiar with Raina?
Oh, absolutely. She's a good big influence of mine. I love her very much.
I'm wearing a little cute little t-shirt here, Justine, called what do you think of the little merman on here?
Oh, I love it.
On the back of it, it says he leaves sparkles wherever he goes.
Nice. That's awesome.
A friend of mine who I met through my dive heart trips actually gifted this to me. And speaking of Dive Heart, before we move on to the next subject, they are a nonprofit organization based out of the Chicago suburb of Downers Grove. And I had thoughts of, possibly starting an adaptive mermaid program of some sort in the future.
That would be really neat. I think it's really needed.
Yeah, because of the fact Dive Heart works with people not just on the spectrum like us, but they also work with people who are blind. They also work with people in wheelchairs. Yeah, who can't move their legs through scuba therapy. course, we're all called adaptive divers, and yes, I'm an adaptive diver too, with Dive
Right.
Heart, which I should have said that earlier. I am officially their first merman because I did
Nice.
a little photo shoot, if you've seen on my Mersona, back in December of, yeah, my pal David Marsh, who's also a filmmaker. He actually told me that he wanted to shoot some photos of me and also a clip of me in my tail, which he did, of course, because one of my straps on my Linden monofin was broken. I didn't yet need to swim in it, but of course, during the said photo shoot, the other strap broke.
Ugh.
Yeah. Okay, the next question is, how did you become a YouTuber?
So the YouTube thing was something I did mostly out of a desire to kind of expand the representation that I was already seeing. I was very much inspired by, as I mentioned before, Nerdmaid Faith, as well as Courtney Mermaid, the Vancouver Mermaid, and both of them kind of quickly became really, really close friends. I've been with them multiple times swimming. I'm now a Shop Vancouver Mermaid affiliate, and essentially kind of how it came about was I was offering perspectives on their live streams, and we were kind of talking behind the scenes, and I realized that I had something to add to the conversation. So I decided to start filming tutorials. It started out tutorials on mermaid tail making, and it expanded into reviews as I acquired more equipment and got more opportunities to swim. It also expanded into kind of the performance art aspect, and that is something that I'm really passionate about. It's a really big hobby of mine, is filmmaking. So kind of making those more performance style swim videos really complemented nicely my advice and the skills that I had in terms of the knowledge I had about safety, the knowledge I had about tail making, and the knowledge I had about kind of the technical aspects of what makes good swim equipment. And so I felt like it was worthwhile sharing my perspective, especially as a plus size mermaid and a non-typical swimmer, and kind of add my voice to the conversation.
Now, as for me being a YouTuber, it was because I wanted to, talk about what it's like to be autistic, and I do adventure videos. Like, some of them are about scuba diving, but it also expanded to vlogs and eventually expanded to Pokemon Go. I also talk about what it's like to be on the spectrum, and I've also shot some videos of me being a merman, including my 3 swims I mentioned, including my recent swim in Cozumel. And I also do reviews of my own as well.
Yeah, that's very exciting. I've seen a couple of your clips when you reached out. So
Yes. Now, one of my videos I did talk about what it's like to be autistic it was kind of a serious one because I was beaten up on the bus here in Philadelphia back in 2018, and I talked about that experience, and it was just terrible, Justine. It's very terrible. I also talked about when I got jumped around the corner from my house too, in my Philadelphia neighborhood.
yeah, it's not something that should be happening, and it's not something that, it's really a shame when it does, and I'm sure that it affected you deeply in terms of how scary that was.
Yes. Yeah, it was. I'm just using that video as an example. And one of my other videos I've also recently did was my trip to Cozumel in general, because of the days I spent scuba diving with with Dive Heart.
I've heard it's a beautiful place to dive. It's on my list.
You should definitely consider joining a Dive Heart trip one day, Justine. You'll have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I bet.
Because the man I know who runs the organization, he's called Jim Elliott, and he started it in 2001, and it was born out of an idea of his daughter being blind. He introduced her to adaptive skiing, and he thought, if this can work with skiing, why not scuba diving? And that's how the concept of Dive Heart was born. It goes, we adapt. And I'll tell you how I found Dive Heart, Justine. It was in a Google search in 2015 for autism and scuba diving, and I found an article from WGN which talks about the person who, of course, he's also one of the people I've met during my numerous trips, a man named Nick Johnson, and his father Glenn, who also has been on these trips too. And then I friended Jim Elliott during one of my Wildwood trips, and then a year later, my friend and scuba mentor Wendy Crown convinced me I should go to Cozumel, and that's how I ended up going to Cozumel.
That's awesome.
And because of these Cozumel trips, it inspired me to join the Adventure Aquarium. And has it had an effect on me being a merman? Yes, it did, because of the fact prior to the pandemic and this recent trip I was on, I was dreaming about getting my first tail when I was in Cozumel in 2019. I'd reached 100 dives during that trip.
It's a big milestone.
And while I'm scuba diving, I also practice my mermaiding skills in the aquarium.
Yep.
I've actually met some of the mermaids from Wands and Wishes when they were visiting the Adventure Aquarium.
I've heard of them. They do good work.
I got to meet Mermaid Serenity. I also got to meet Mermaid Calliope.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I hope to meet them again. And I'm also friends with someone who also works at the aquarium and is also a Wands and Wishes mermaid herself. She calls herself Mermaid Sydney.
I have not heard of her, but I'm sure she's floating around on Instagram. I'll go
Yeah,
give
she
her a look.
is. And she's actually from Australia, too.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, she's a sweet mermaid. Sweet person. Now, what else do you also have to offer? Like,
Well, in terms of what else I do, I'm always around on Instagram and on YouTube to discuss kind of as I mentioned before, I'm a big kind of advocate and consultant for the plus size community on how to make tails more inclusive. I am around Instagram at the Mermaid Seamstress. I'm around on YouTube at the Mermaid Seamstress. I'm always happy to chat with people about tail making and kind of what it is like to be a plus size mermaid and a neurodivergent mermaid for sure. And yeah, kind of just exploring the world one fin flick at a time.
as a fellow neurodivergent merfolk myself, yeah, I know you're not the only one I know. I've known others, and I happen to be one of them. And I'm glad to hear that you're working on this, to represent plus size merfolk. I use my merman handle to, represent autism as a merman.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It takes all kinds.
And lastly, before we go, what advice do you have for those on the spectrum, plus size, and in general when it comes to being a diver, a mer person, or a YouTuber like yourself?
I would say my biggest piece of advice is make the content that you want for yourself first. Whether that's swim videos or, dive experiences, make sure that you're putting yourself first in terms of what you want and what you're interested in. And if the opinions of other people are helpful, but ultimately if working for other people or fulfilling the expectations of other people first is not making you happy, you have to make yourself happy and fulfill your own expectations and your own desires first.
Thanks for the advice, Justine.
Thank you for asking.
And thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well, I'd like to thank Justine for this wonderful interview and the wonderful things they had to say during it. In the meantime, this is Lewis saying, thanks for watching, everyone. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitch, Facebook, and TikTok. Remember,